Hi everyone, welcome to this GCSE Higher Revision video. Today we're going to focus on the topic of algebraic fractions. So we're going to be looking at dealing with fractions that involve algebra. Obviously make sure you're confident with your operations with fractions to begin with. So if you need to go back to those early videos on the 100 days to go and look at adding fractions, subtracting fractions, multiplying fractions, dividing fractions, that'll be useful as well. It's also useful to know how to expand two brackets and how to factorize two brackets, perhaps if you need to cancel down algebraic fractions as well. So make sure you're confident with those skills before today's video. If you can't find the days to go videos to watch on those, remember on the Corbettmaths, on the contents page, you've got all the topics there and you can find whatever you want there as well. So today we're going to be looking at algebraic fractions, so let's get started.
Hi, today we're going to be looking at algebraic fractions, and I'm guessing at this point with 17 days to go you've done loads of algebraic fractions within past papers and lessons, revision sessions and things like that. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to give you some questions to try yourself, and then I'll go through how to do each one. So we're going to start off with simplifying some algebraic fractions, then we'll look at, I think it's multiplying, then dividing, and then adding algebraic fractions. So let's start off with this question. The question is to simplify x squared minus 2x minus 8 over x squared plus 6x minus 40. So feel free to press pause now to try this question. Okay, so if I wanted to simplify this, the first thing I'd want to do is I would want to factorize the numerator and factorize the denominator. And they're both quadratic, so let's try and factorize them. So let's put our brackets down, bracket, 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 and on the denominator, bracket, 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 bracket. So on the numerator, because it's x squared, we're going to put x's at the front of both brackets. And then we want to find two numbers that multiply together to give us negative 8 and add together to give us negative 2. So I'm thinking minus 4 and plus 2, because minus 4 times 2 is minus 8 and minus 4 plus 2 is minus 2. So that's the numerator factorized. Now let's factorize the denominator, and hopefully one of these two brackets will be on the denominator as well, and then we can cancel them down and so on. So let's have a look at the denominator. We've got x squared, so again x and x at the front of both brackets. We want two numbers that multiply together to be minus 40. When we add them together we get 6, so I'm thinking minus 4 and plus 10. Because minus 4 times 10 is minus 40, and minus 4 plus 10 is 6. So that's fantastic. We've factorized the numerator and we've factorized the denominator, and as we've wanted, we've got the same bracket on the numerator and denominator. So we can divide both the numerator and denominator by x minus 4. So they will cancel out, and that will leave us with x plus 2 over x plus 10. And that's it. And I've got rid of the brackets there because we've just got our x plus 2 and our x plus 10. And that's it. And if you simplify this and you got x plus 2 over x plus 10, well done. Okay, let's look at our next question. So next question says simplify x squared plus 6x plus 9 over x squared minus 2x minus 15. So feel free to press pause and to try this now. Okay, so again, let's factorize the numerator and factorize the denominator and see what we get. So if we factorize the numerator and factorize the denominator, hopefully some brackets will cancel. So on the numerator, we've got x and x at the front of both brackets. We want two numbers that will multiply together to be 9 and add together to be 6. That's going to be plus 3 and plus 3. That's quite straightforward. In terms of the denominator, we've got our x and our x in the front of both brackets. We want two numbers that will multiply together to be minus 15 and add together to be minus 2. So it's going to be minus 5 and plus 3. Because minus 5 times 3 is minus 15, and minus 5 plus 3 is minus 2. So now if we have a look at this, we can divide both the numerator and denominator by x plus 3. So that'll leave us with x plus 3 over x minus 5. And again, if you got that, well done. Okay, let's look at our next question. Okay, so this time I want you to press pause and to simplify x squared minus 15x plus 44 over x squared minus 16. Okay, again, let's try and factorize the numerator and factorize the denominator. So in terms of the numerator, we're going to put x and x at the front of our brackets. Now we want two numbers that will multiply together to be 44 and add together to be minus 15. Now because they times together to be a positive, then that means they'll either both be positive or both be negative, but adding together to be negative 15, so it means they're both negative in this case. And I'm thinking 4 and 11, so minus 4 and minus 11, because they times together to be positive 44 and they add together to be minus 15. Now, if we have a look at the denominator, we've got a difference between two squareds. We've got x squared and 16, and we've got the difference between them that take away. So we're going to do x, and then we're going to square root the 16 and get 4 and 4. And remember, with difference between two squareds, you do one with a plus sign and one with a minus sign. So we've factorized the numerator and we've factorized the denominator. Now we just need to cancel down. We can divide both the numerator and denominator by x minus 4. So that'll leave us with x minus 11 over x plus 4. And if you got that, well done. Okay, let's have a look at another one. Okay, this time we've got a slightly harder quadratic on the denominator, so feel free to press pause now to simplify this fraction. Okay, so again, we want to factorize the numerator and factorize the denominator, so let's factorize both the numerator and denominator and see what we get. So in terms of the numerator, we've got x squared, so we're going to go for x and x. We want two numbers that will multiply together to be minus 8 and add together to be minus 2, so I'm thinking minus 4 and positive 2, because minus 4 times 2 is minus 8, and minus 4 plus 2 is minus 2. Okay, so that's the numerator factorized. Now in terms of the denominator, well, because it's 3x squared, I'm going to go for 3x and an x, because 3x times x is 3x squared. Now in terms of the numbers on the end, they're going to multiply together to be 2. So I'm thinking perhaps a 1 and a 2 here, and we want to, whenever we expand our brackets, get 7x. So if I put the 2 over here and the 1 here, then that would be, if I expand this, I'd get 3x squared plus 6x plus x, that's plus 7x, plus 2, so that's it. Now if we have a look here, we've got x plus 2 and x plus 2, so let's cancel those out. Let's divide both the numerator and denominator by x plus 2, and that'll leave us with x minus 4 over 3x plus 1. And that's it, and if you got that, well done. Okay, so we've had a look at how to simplify algebraic fractions. Now let's look at multiplying algebraic fractions. So remember, to multiply fractions, you just multiply the numerators together and you multiply the denominators together. So if I wanted to multiply these algebraic fractions together, I could just multiply the numerators together. So 4 times x squared minus 2x would be 4 bracket x squared minus 2x. I'm actually just putting them beside each other. Remember, that means we're multiplying them. And then in terms of the denominator, we're going to do x minus 2 times 8. So I'm going to put the 8 in front and then in brackets x minus 2. So we're just multiplying the two numerators together and we're multiplying the two denominators together. Now at this point we could try and start cancelling down, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to expand both the numerator and denominator, factorize, and then cancel down. So in terms of the numerator, let's expand these brackets. 4 times x squared would be 4x squared, and 4 times minus 2x would be minus 8x. So we've expanded the numerator, now let's expand the denominator. So 8 times x would be 8x, then we've got a minus sign, and then 8 times 2 would be 16. So we've expanded the brackets, now let's factorize this and then cancel down. So in terms of factorizing it, in terms of 4x squared minus 8x, they're both divisible by 4x, so we could do 4x and then in brackets. 4x squared divided by 4x would be x, and then we've got minus, and then 8x divided by 4x would be 2. So we've factorized the numerator, now let's factorize the denominator. So we've got 8x minus 16, they're both divisible by 8, so we've got 8, and then in brackets, 8x divided by 8 would be x, then minus, and 16 divided by 8 would be 2. So factorize the numerator and factorize the denominator, now we can cancel down. We can divide both the numerator and denominator by x minus 2, so they could cancel out. And then we've got 4x over 8, we can divide both the numerator and denominator by 4, so then that would leave us with x over 2. So the answer would be x over 2, and that's it. And that's pretty cool whenever you look at what we started with, and then the answer is just x over 2, and that's it. Okay, so that's one approach to that question. Another approach would be to actually cancel down before you multiply. So actually, whenever you're multiplying algebraic fractions, sometimes it can be quite useful to cancel down before you multiply them. And because you're going to multiply them and you know that the numerator is going to become 4 bracket x squared minus 2x, and then the denominator would be 8 bracket x minus 2, you know that you're going to be putting the numerators together and the denominators together. You can actually cancel down using, for instance, this numerator and that denominator, and that numerator and that denominator, and so on. So in terms of 4 and 8, they're both divisible by 4, so we can divide them both by 4, and that would give us 1 and 2. And then if we have a look here, we've got x squared minus 2x and x minus 2. In terms of this numerator, it factorizes. So if you take an x out, you get x bracket x minus 2. And now we can actually divide both this numerator and that denominator by x minus 2. So they would cancel out. We're left with 1 there. So now if we have a look at it, we've got 1 and x on the numerator. So 1 times x is x. And then in terms of the denominator, you've got 1 times 2, which is 2. So you can actually cancel down before you multiply. So it's really up to you in terms of which approach you want to use. It's just as long as you get it right. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. So our next question says, simplify x squared plus 2x minus 8 over x squared plus 5x plus 6 multiplied by x plus 2 over x plus 4. So feel free to press pause now and to try this question. Okay, so in terms of this question, the approach that I would use to begin with is I would factorize the numerator and denominator to begin with. So factorizing this would give us on our numerator and denominator. So in terms of our numerator here, we've got x and x. And then we're looking for two numbers that will multiply together to be minus 8 and add together to be 2, so I'm thinking plus 4 and minus 2. So that's what we get if we factorize that numerator. And now in terms of the denominator, if we factorize this, x and x, we're looking for two numbers that times together to be 6 and add together to be 5, so I'm thinking plus 2 and plus 3. So factorize the numerator and we'll factorize the denominator. And now we just need to multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. So that would give us, if we multiply them, it would be x plus 4 bracket x minus 2 bracket x plus 2. So that's the numerator. In terms of the denominator, it would be x plus 2, x plus 3, and x plus 4. Now, just before we carry on, we could have actually cancelled down some of these brackets. So, for instance, I could have cancelled out that x plus 4 and that x plus 4, and for instance, that x plus 2 and so on at that point. But we can do it now. If we have a look here in terms of our numerator and denominator, they're both divisible by x plus 4. So let's divide both by x plus 4. They're both divisible by x plus 2. So our answer would be x minus 2 over x plus 3. And that's it. We've simplified it. And if you got that, well done. Okay, let's look at our next question. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. So our next question says simplify x squared plus x over 9 multiplied by 3 over x squared plus 8x plus 7. So feel free to press pause now and try this question. Okay, so in terms of this question, what I'm actually going to do this time is I'm going to factorize the numerator and denominator, and I'm actually going to try and cancel down before I multiply this time, just to show you that approach is fine as well. So in terms of the numerator here, we can factorize this, x squared plus x, that'll be x, and then in brackets, x plus 1, just factorizing the numerator. And in terms of the denominator here, if we factorize this, we would have an x and an x, and we want two numbers that would multiply together to be 7 and add together to be 8, so I'm thinking plus 1 and plus 7. Now at this point we could multiply and get 3x bracket x plus 1 on the numerator, and on the denominator 9x plus 1 x plus 7. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel down first. So the 3 and 9, we can divide both of those by 3, so that would give us 1 and 3. And in terms of this numerator and this denominator, we can divide both of them by x plus 1, so they would cancel out as well. So that means in terms of our numerator, we'd have x times 1, which is x, and in terms of our denominator, we've got 3 multiplied by x plus 7, so 3 bracket x plus 7, and that's it. And you could leave it like that if you wanted to, or you could write it as x over 3x plus 21. I probably would just write it like this, and that's it. And if you got that, well done. So we've had a look at how to simplify and also how to multiply algebraic fractions. Now let's look at division. Okay, so feel free to press pause and try this question out yourself. So here we've got 10x over 3y divided by 15x over y. Now consider how we divide fractions. We multiply by the reciprocal of the fraction we're dividing by. So if we've got 10x over 3y, that would be 10x over 3y. But then instead of divided, we're going to have a multiply, and then we would do the reciprocal. So then it'd be y over 15x. So we've got the reciprocal of what we're dividing by. Now we just need to multiply. Now at this point, we could do some cancelling down first. So for instance, we could divide this denominator and this numerator by y. And we could divide this numerator and this denominator by 5x. But I'm just going to multiply to begin with. So 10x times y would be 15xy. And the denominator, 3y times 15x, would be 45xy. Okay, now let's cancel down. We can divide both the numerator and denominator by x and by y, and also by 5. So if we divide this by 5, we get 2, and if we divide this by 5, we get that's equal to 9. So the answer would just be 2/9. So 10x over 3y divided by 15x over y would be just 2/9, and that's it. And if you got that, well done. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. So our next question says simplify v plus 3 over 2 divided by 3v plus 9 over 5. So feel free to press pause and try this question now. Okay, so here what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the first fraction the same, v plus 3 over 2, and then instead of dividing, I'm going to put a multiply, and I'm going to do the reciprocal of the second fraction, so 5 over 3v plus 9. Now at this point we can multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators and then cancel down, or we can try and cancel down first. I'm going to try and cancel down first in this question. So with this 3v plus 9, we can take the 3 out, so it'll be 3 bracket v plus 3, close brackets. And now here we can divide both this numerator and this denominator by v plus 3. So on the numerator, 1 times 5, which is equal to 5, and on the denominator we've got 2 times 3, and 2 times 3 would be equal to 6. So the answer would be 5/6, and if you got that, well done. Okay, let's look at our next question. Okay, so our next question is to simplify 14 over x squared minus 5x plus 6 divided by 7 over x squared plus 3x minus 10. So feel free to press pause and try this question now. Okay, so in terms of this first fraction, that will stay the same, 14 over x squared minus 5x plus 6. And then we'll change our divide to a multiply, and we'll do the reciprocal of the second fraction, so that'll be x squared plus 3x minus 10 over 7. So we're multiplying by the reciprocal. So with the first fraction, we'd have 14 over, and then let's factorize the denominator. So let's factorize that and see what we get. So that'll be x and x. We want two numbers that will multiply together to be 6 and add together to be minus 5. So I'm thinking minus 2 and minus 3. And then we'd have multiply, and then our second fraction, we'll do another fraction. And then with our second fraction, well, that'll be over 7. Let's factorize the numerator. So it'll be x and x. We want two numbers that multiply together to be negative 10 and add together to be 3. So I'm thinking plus 5 and minus 2. So factorize the two quadratics. Now let's multiply. Now actually at this point, before we multiply, let's see if we can do any cancelling down. So 14 and 7 are both divisible by 2. So that'll be 2 and 1. And we can also divide this numerator and this denominator by x minus 2. So that will leave us on the numerators 2 times bracket x plus 5, and on the denominator we've got x minus 3 times 1, so it'll just be x minus 3. Now at this point you could expand your brackets and write 2x plus 10 over x minus 3, but I probably would just leave it like that, and that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question. Okay, so we've had a look at how to simplify algebraic fractions, how to multiply and how to divide them. Now let's look at adding algebraic fractions and subtracting algebraic fractions as well. So here's a question for you. It says simplify 3x over 5 plus x over 2. So feel free to press pause and try this question now yourself. Okay, so if I wanted to add these algebraic fractions, what I want to do is I want to have the same denominator. So with 5 and 2, a common denominator that I'm going to choose would be 10. So 10 and 10. To get from 5 to 10, we multiply by 2. So we need to multiply the numerator by 2. So that'll be 6x. And then with this fraction, to get from 2 to 10, we multiply by 5. So let's multiply the numerator by 5. X times 5 is 5x. So we've got 6x over 10 plus 5x over 10. Well, because the denominators are the same, we can just add the numerators. 6x plus 5x is 11x. So we can have 11x over 10. And that's it. And if you got 11x over 10, well done. Okay, let's look at our next one. Okay, so our next question says simplify 5x minus 4 over 2 plus x plus 1 over 3. So feel free to press pause and try this question out yourself. Okay, so in terms of adding these fractions, we want the same denominator, so I'm going to choose 6 and 6 because with 2 and 3, a common denominator would be 6. To get from 2 to 6, we multiply by 3, so let's multiply the numerator by 3. So multiplying both of these by 3 would give us 5x times 3 is 15x, and minus 4 times 3 would be minus 12. Now in terms of this fraction, to get from 3 to 6, we times by 2 or double it, so let's double or multiply by 2 the numerator, that would be 2x plus 2. So now we've got two fractions with a common denominator. Now we can just add the numerators. So the denominator is going to be 6. And in terms of the numerators, we've got 15x plus 2x. That'll be 17x. And then be careful here. We've got minus 12 plus 2. And minus 12 plus 2 going back up to would be minus 10. So the answer would be 17x minus 10 over 6. And if you got that, well done. And this can't be cancelled down. So that's it. And just make sure at this point, if you can cancel down that fraction, you try and cancel it down. But at this point, we can't cancel down because with 17 and 10 and 6, we can't cancel that down. Okay, so let's have a look at our next question. So next question says simplify 5 subtract x over 6 subtract 8 subtract 3x over 10. So feel free to press pause and try this question now. Okay, so just like the other questions, we want to have a common denominator. And with 6 and 10, I'm thinking 30, because we can have 30 and 30 as the common denominator, and then subtract. To get from 6 to 30, we multiply by 5. So let's multiply everything on the numerator by 5. So 5 times 5 is 25. And then minus x times 5 would be minus 5x. And in terms of our second fraction, to get from 10 to 30, we multiply by 3. So we need to multiply everything on the numerator by 3. 8 times 3 is 24. And then we've got minus, and then 3x times 3 would be 9x. So we've got 25 minus 5x over 30. Subtract 24 minus 9x over 30. So they've both got a common denominator. Now we've got to be a little bit careful here because we are subtracting everything on the numerator here. We're doing 25 take away 24. And we're doing minus 5x minus 9x. So we need to be careful there. So let's do that. So our denominator is going to be 30 because we're taking away two fractions with the same denominator. 25 take away 24 would be 1. And then we've got minus 5x take away minus 9x. We're subtracting minus 9x, which means we're adding 9x on. And if we've got minus 5x and we add 9x, that'll be 4x, so plus 4x. And actually we can turn that around and write 4x plus 1 over 30. And that's it. And if you got that, well done. Okay, let's have a look at one more question. So this time we've got simplify 2 over x plus 5 plus 3 over x plus 1. So we want to add these fractions together, so feel free to press pause and to try this question out yourself. Okay, so we want to get a common denominator. Now to get a common denominator here, we're going to need to multiply both the numerator and denominator of this fraction by x plus 1. And we're going to need to multiply both the numerator and denominator of this fraction by x plus 5. So let's do that. So we're going to multiply both of these by x plus 1. So that'll be on the numerator 2, then in brackets x plus 1, just multiplying that by x plus 1. And then on the denominator, we would have x plus 5, and then we're multiplying that by x plus 1. So just multiplying both the 2 and the x plus 5 by x plus 1. Then we've got our plus sign, and now we need to multiply both of these by x plus 5. So we'd have 3, and then brackets x plus 5, close brackets, and then over. And then we've got our x plus 1, and we're going to times by x plus 5. Now we could write x plus 1, and then in brackets x plus 5. I'm just going to write it the other way around, just so it matches the first fraction. So I've got x plus 5, and then in brackets x plus 1, close brackets. So we've multiplied both the numerator and denominator of this fraction by x plus 1, and we've multiplied both the numerator and denominator of this fraction by x plus 5. And we've got a common denominator. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand the brackets on the numerators. So 2 times x would be 2x, and then 2 times 1 would be 2, so plus 2. And then we've still got that denominator of x plus 5 bracket x plus 1, and we've just expanded the brackets on the numerator. And now let's do the same with this fraction. So 3 times x is 3x, and 3 times 5 is 15, so plus 15. And that's got that denominator as well of x plus 5, x plus 1. So we've just expanded our brackets. Now let's add them together because we've got the same denominator. So our answer will have the same denominator, x plus 5 brackets x plus 1. And in terms of the numerator, 2x plus 3x is 5x, and 2 plus 15 is 17, so plus 17. And that's it, we're done.
And that's it. So in this video, we've looked at algebraic fractions. I really hope you found this video useful. Algebraic fractions is one of those topics that I said the more practice, the better. The more you practice this topic, the more confident you'll be on it. Actually, that's probably every topic. But in the description below, there's a link to the practice questions in algebraic fractions, and give those a shot because I think, as I said, the more practice you do in these questions, the better. And that's it. So keep up the hard work. I'll see you tomorrow for 16 days to go into your GCSE exam. So keep up the hard work and I'll see you tomorrow. Cheers. Bye.